hackathon that we have been working very hard on. And in this first phase, the ideation phase, we are excited to share you many ideas, many panels, to give you the opportunity to share with you as many ideas as possible to work on the ideation part of your project and bring the next best project on top of Celo blockchain. So just to bring a context, yesterday we saw with Nirvan his perspective on what ReFi is, and we went into detail on the stack thesis used to put an organizational framework on this new movement of ReFi. Today, we will discuss social impact and, of course, its relation to ReFi. And for this, today, we have the pleasure to have some great community members, Angelo and Gabriela. I'm going to invite them right now on stage. I will ask Angela and Gabriela, could you introduce yourself, please, and tell us all the great work that you're doing in the Celo ecosystem? Maybe we can start with Gabriela.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Gabriela Chang, co-founder of EthiHub. We were pioneers using blockchain to enable that anyone in the world can invest into smallholder farmers trapped in the poverty cycle, because as a quarter of the world population, they are excluded from the financial system. So that's what I do. But who I am, I am an industrial designer. I was a former organic coffee producer, and I work in Mexico, in Chiapas, for the Secretary of Economic Development. So I'm quite aware of the problems down in ground with the small farmers. And I've devoted the last 5 years of my life to make sure people is aware of these problems, and that we finally count on the tools, on the technological tools to solve it. And I'm also aware of the need to spread word about this technology, because when you don't know something, you distrust it. So part of my work is to participate into panels to talk about how blockchain can be a powerful tool to solve these big problems in the world. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabriela. And now let's introduce to Angelo. Angelo.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Angelo Calao. I work at the Research and Innovation Circle at Celo Foundation. Our role is to catalyze development in the Celo ecosystem, as well as support more builders like you. I came on board in Celo originally as a project manager, managing pilots that develop different use cases to prove the real world utility of Celo as a blockchain. And now I'm leading the Social Impact Collective, and we want to catalyze more innovative approaches to societal issues through Web3. And I'm very happy to join this panel, Gabriela and Nestor. I'm looking forward to your questions and the robust discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And now we're going to share what we're going to cover. What we're going to cover today is first, create a common understanding of what is impact. Then we're going to talk about some blockchain-based approaches for this Celo ecosystem. And then we're going to have some crypto pilot examples that are going to be very useful for developers to kind of see tangible examples on what community members in the Celo ecosystem are building right now. So for that, let's first start with impact. This is the most general definition of impact. That is the effect or influence of one person, thing, or action on another. Gabriela is going to share a specific definition about impact. But before, I would like to ask Angelo. Angelo, from your perspective, what does impact means in the work you're doing?
Yeah, so at Celo Foundation, we realize we confront a lot of issues and challenges globally, right? And this could include inequality, global financial exclusion, unemployment. And to me, impact really is more of like, there's like a, a debate of like what it really means. But perhaps I could describe it more in terms of its property. I think at the end of the day, impact should be measurable. It should be verifiable. It's very important because a lot of like developers and builders would pitch to their funders as well as like to their stakeholders to say that, oh, we're really demonstrating change. But for me, that real change should always be something that we can account for, something that we can verify, and something that is really supported by what do you call this? By qualitative feedback from the stakeholders themselves. And I think blockchain, in general, as a technology, allows us to do this, to have more tools to make sure that the impact that we claim that we have is really measurable and verifiable, especially with the distributed ledger technology, right? And so, just like as a summary, and I think Gabriela would have very concrete, descriptions about this. I think impact for me is like that palpable delta from like where the baseline is for our stakeholders, what we choose, that we describe. There's no single way to say that there's this is like the only way that we can measure progress. But then I think what's most important is, like there is a significant, development, improvement in the welfare of the stakeholders that we choose.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Angelo, for your perspective on what impact is and how what it means in the work you're doing. Gabriela, I know you have a very great definition. Please share with us.
Well, it's actually the same thing, kind of the same thing that Angelo has said. But what I'd like to add is that a definition by per se is what most people think of a word. And regarding impact, since it's so important to gather efforts to move forward to the solution of these problems, it was needed to set a consensus about this regarding measure, assets, and reporting of impact on people and the natural environment. And the impact management project began in 2016. So we often say we don't need to start anything from zero. We can build on what it's already done. So regarding this impact management project, it sets a framework to differentiate impact investing from other forms of sustainability investment, talking about money. No, it needs to be specifically focused on the excluded population, that is the unattended population, because we can make impact in Europe, but Europe is not a part of the, let's go one step before. A quarter of the world population is excluded from the traditional financial system, and lots of the SDGs we're trying to solve derivates from this lack of natural flow of money into these excluded populations, unattended populations also called this segment. For example, the perception of risk for small farmers is too high, so money doesn't flow naturally there. So in order to be considered impact investing, it needs to generate a deep and long-term impact. It is not enough to bring the money and that's it, but to make sure it is transformative, to improve the local systems in a way that money keeps flowing even after the impact investors have retrieved back their investing. So just to say that these general agreed definitions, it would be the positive impact generated into the excluded population. And this regards the population and also the environment. So I think we all agree. So I just wanted to set this global reference. This behind this is also the GIN, the Global Impact Investment Network, that has developed a system to measure, assess, and report the impact that is called the IRIS Plus. We talk about this in Barcelona already. Like, this is a standard that doesn't include all the new technologies. So we need to add on top of that to start building. But I think it's an amazing baseline to keep on building. As we said in blockchain, it's composable. So we need to add what we are doing to go faster instead of starting from zero.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the definition from Gabriela and Angelo. And now I would like to ask Gabriela and Angelo, how does social impacts relates to refi? And in fact, is there any difference or a mental model you could share to differentiate them or are the same? Let's start now with Angelo.
Yeah, I would admit this is a tricky kind of like definition, no? But maybe I will share my personal thoughts here. I believe we can have an entire debating on the philosophy of what is refi or what is social impact. And, so a lot of people have built their careers in the industry as well. But I think the beauty, especially that it is linked to Web3, is that there is a significant component that we continue to shape what it means, right, as a community. And that meaning, in a way, is a little fluid. And I'm starting with this just to say because it's part of the beauty of the concept. As people build their products, as we kind of like interact with stakeholders, we find new meaning. We find kind of like new nuances, right? It's achievable through DeFi. But to answer your question, Nestor, to me, I think they're very much related. And in a way, like kind of DeFi will bring about social impact, and social impact kind of like underpins what you want to do with refi at the end of the day. So at Celo, kind of like we see the definition of refi to be three pronged, right? Like the individual, community, and the kind of like pillars of refi talk to each other. Like an environment is necessary for communities and to thrive. Um, and then there's that symbiotic relation, like individuals and communities also need the environment to prosper or to be preserved. And then at the same time, communities need individuals to exist, right? And then individuals need communities, on the other hand, to sustain or like to promote their well-being. And so refi for me, I think addresses the current misgivings or like shortcomings of the current system where it's just a endless growth, pursuit for endless growth, pursuit for like natural capital, like capital extraction. But thinking about long-term sustainability, I think that's the first component. And then the second part also is individuals and communities seeing what they call that for progress to happen. It needs everyone to be involved. It does not need to be a race, the first person to reach the finish line, but it needs kind of like, growing together, building products together, and then making sure that the environment, the bigger environment where we support in is not pressured or not sustainable. So, and I think that's social impact, right? Because I feel that this shift in the paradigm is necessary because our mindset right now is also what's leading to these widespread inequality as well as like deprivation. Because we always think about how do we go ahead by ourselves, or like some communities going ahead over the others. Whereas if we think about like how we could help each other, how could we kind of like have that communion uh, where there is more shared prosperity, then that's also the social impact that we kind of try to do here. So
Awesome.
those are my initial thoughts.
Yep, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Gabriela, what are your thoughts?
I totally agree with Angelo. We are in love with Celo and the philosophy of this regenerative approach because I think it's evidently social. The economy it's linked to the people, to the communities. And I would like to set like the two examples of the two extremes of this. We've been living until now in an extractive system, and opposed to extractive, it's regenerative. It means you take, but you give more than what you take. Like for Etihad, we are for profit, but we generate more value than the value we extract. And here I would like to talk a bit about capitalism. I think as a system, it has enabled evolution, it has enabled development, it has enabled research, science, everything. But we made a mistake. We made an extractive economic regarding the capitalism, because we consider capital was only money, and capital is also social and environmental, to say the least. And I like to use an example, a very simple one, regarding when you build a chair, furniture, wooden furniture, you take into account how much cost you the wood, how much you pay to the carpenter, and all the process. But you didn't take into account the tree and all the services that tree was providing to the environment. So you never make a profit on the spite of the capital. And we haven't made the right accounts, the right accounting. We didn't take into consideration those trees we were cutting to produce the wood. So in order to be regenerative, we should put back all those resources we take to produce, and we haven't. And that's why we are in the situation we are right now. No? So I definitely think regenerative ReFi, which the description would be regenerative finance, is not only related to finance, but finance is the vehicle to provide the well-being and the balance, the equilibrium we need. Because quite often we think, as I said, as capital, as monetary, and there's a lot. Money is just a vehicle for well-being and happiness, and we should take that into account. So I repeat myself with this concept. Uh, Regeneration is linked to society. Economy is linked to society. So a regenerative system should be addressed into a new wave of extracting goods without uh, having a negative balance, no, but producing more to keep it for the future. Because the description of the UNO regarding sustainability, that is covering the basic needs of the present generations without putting in risk the satisfaction of basic needs for the future generations, that's not enough. That would be sustainability, to let things as they are now, but we need to go a step further and to give back what we took before.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all these thoughts for you both. And now one thing that we could shift to is, okay, now let's talk about blockchain-based approach to address these societal issues that we have been mentioning, right? So with this enablement, let's discuss one societal issue that you both have worked on it: lack of credit in developing countries. So let's now start with Gabriela. You have already passed that path to create one project, to be the founder, and have this unique approach on EthiCup. So what lessons could you give to builders in this ideation phase that we are right now to arrive with a bold idea, and yeah, pretty much what lessons could you share with them?
Thank you. I will love this because we learn a lot on the bad and the good side, and of course, I think it's very fulfilling to share this. We were pioneers using blockchain, using smart contracts to connect normal people, not technological people, average people in Europe, and connect them with the farmers. And the biggest mistake we did was to build the platform before proving the model was needed, the market fit was there. It would have been easier to iterate into the model, into the idea, and validate it. Fortunately, we choose the right problem and the right focus. But I would recommend developers to start validating first the idea and to see if there is a fast way, a light way of doing this before going into coding. Because coding, especially if you're coding on blockchain, which is immutable, wouldn't allow for mistakes. So it's very important to work a lot on the thinking, on the pre-thinking, pre-programming before going into code. As the ideas may be bright, I think it's more important to focus on the problem, because sometimes we fall in love with our solution and we must be in love with the problem. So when you need to change the approach or change the idea you originally have, the problem is still there to be solved. So I would say that to address real problems, so there's always be place for this solution. And as I said at the beginning, focus on validating it before starting to code.
Awesome. Yeah, great ideas. Completely agree. And now I would like to ask Angelo. Angelo, can you share with us how developers should bring to fruition a project idea on this topic?
Yeah, so maybe I will also root it in an example on lack of credit. Recently, we did a pilot in Nanyuki in Kenya. It's in the north. We reached out to farmers. They're leasing their land to a company who practices what they call mosaic agriculture. And the landowners by themselves would not till their own land for various reasons. But one reason is like back the scale as well as like access to credit to farm, right? To be very productive with their own land, and they own the land. And so what we did was to support this company that has this employer-employee relationship with them, and use that relationship as the leverage to issue an accessible credit. Normally, if you look at rural Kenya, the sources of credit for them normally would be, informal sources or banks that would require a lot of documents that would require to charge very high fees. So through that pilot, we partnered with Mula Market, which is a decentralized lending protocol on Celo. We were able to provide cheaper loans, more accessible loans to farmers. And the key innovation here is that through another ecosystem partner, Kotani Pay, who is also in Kenya, our farmers did not need to have a smartphone. Were able to access a loan via USSD, like via feature phones. And I think this is the power of blockchain. We democratize access. We revolutionize the way financial intermediation is happening right now. And we open new ways for people to access credit, right? And to access financial services that is needed between, and it could be the difference between being able to farm and to, get value from your property and ownership. And these are just many examples. And the other thing with blockchain that we see is like this transparency and accountability, right? Like we get to see where the money is flowing, we get to track it, and so we know that we don't need like this black box anymore of like financial institutions, and we get it directly to those who need the credit the most. So that's one example, and then happy to chat and like answer more questions from the group.
Great, great. So yeah, we just shift now to crypto pilots, right, Angelo? I don't know if you would like to share
Sure.
more examples about crypto pilot, please.
I'd love to do that. Maybe there's just one slide that I added here, Nestor. So as I mentioned, my role at Celo Foundation is to support pilots and use case developments. We want to create an evidence base that blockchain can use in the real world. There's utility for real world use cases. And so like over my time at Celo, one pilot that I was talking about was in Kenya. But slowly we're partnering with very talented builders as well as like NGOs and organizations to try out applications of blockchain, right? The very first project I did, for example, was to use Celo, CUSD, and stable assets, as well as like a mobile wallet built on Celo named Valora to deliver humanitarian aid. We did that for 3,500 women in the Philippines. And then ever since, we have new ecosystem builders that are using the blockchain, the Celo blockchain, to deliver aid is even in difficult places. We have pilots in Ecuador to deal with or to help Venezuelan migrants as well as in Haiti, those that have been affected by the disaster. And then other than that, there are also other innovations that blockchain can support, right? So think about employment. So we have a lot of opportunities online, especially like in countries where opportunities or employment opportunities are scarce. But then like one pain point that workers experience, for example, is that they don't have a bank account, especially if they might be a refugee in a new country, or at least like opening an account is quite difficult for them. Yet they have the talent to work, and so what blockchain enables is having this access to this work through platforms that support what we call this that support digital work, and then getting remunerated in cryptocurrency that they can directly convert to fiat, or at least like accessing DeFi products and services to grow their income or their wealth, right? And so again, like I want to focus or like highlight the idea that blockchain can open access to a lot of things and resolve a lot of pain points for us. So we continue to do these pilots. We continue to find new use cases. We're talking a lot about DeFi. A lot of climate action can be accelerated by the blockchain. And we encourage builders because these are the projects or the issues where your talent and like your ideas are most needed. And Celo is here to support together with the community to make sure that you succeed.
Awesome. Many great crypto pilots that you have worked on, Angelo. Also excited to know about the crypto pilots that Gabriela has been working on. Gabriela?
Well, I would love to share here the work we've done through EthiHub. As I said, we started back in 2018, and we started as a crowd lending platform to build a bridge to connect the excluded population from developed countries. So I would like to share the why behind EthiHub. We believe blockchain is the future financial system. So we started by thinking what's the worst dysfunction of the traditional system, of the current system. And it was, according to the World Bank, that it left excluded a quarter of the world population, 2 billion people. And 70% of those 2 billions are small farmers, producing a third of the food of the world. And they yet are trapped in the poverty cycle despite having productive activities because they don't have access to credit, because the only money they can find is the shark loans, and they have to pay over 100% interest for the little money they get. So we leverage on the global paradox of being 1,000 million people borrowing money is so expensive, while in the other side of the world, we didn't find where to invest our savings to keep its value. I mean, you have your money in the bank and you don't get even 1%. In Europe, we have now negative rates. So we decided, why don't we connect them both and generate a mutual benefit by them lending them very affordable money and the farmers producing a yield for these investors, for these impact investors. So that's how we started as a crowd lending platform. That was the Wild West. There were no stable coins. We built our own smart contracts. We start from scratch, from zero. And we started with 24 farmers. Now we are very happy to count on more than 500 families. And we have used this platform to transfer almost $2 billion in $2 million in microloans with less than 2% default. And as an evolution of this, we learned that it was not just the financial exclusion. Why didn't have access to the more affordable loans in the bank? Because they have 1 year long activity. So microfinance won't lend them money if you don't pay them every week or every month. And this for long-term agriculture was impossible. So the problem behind this was the lack of valid collateral. So after deploying our crowd lending platform, after 3 years of working with the smart contracts and with the farmers, we launched crowd collateral to address the problems of those unbanked farmers who has no data to be evaluated, to have a risk assessment based on data because they don't have connectivity and they don't have valid assets to act as collateral or to be tokenized because no one is interested into the 1 hectare of land they have in the middle of nowhere. Even if we put together all that land, it accounts for 80% of the total production of coffee in the world, in the case of coffee farmers. So that's where we started. So we said we connect both worlds, DeFi as leverage to provide this liquid collateral to the loans and to make them more secure. So we are very proud to say that we secure impact investing. We made yield farmers to back actual farmers. And in this crypto winter, we have proven our model is very resilient because the 8% annual return provided by the lending platform doesn't come from financial derivatives. it comes from the real agriculture, from the real world. And even when the prices are down, we are still over 10 times over collateralized. So the loans are very secure. So what we want to capitalize is on this idea, and that's why we are in love with Celo, on this idea of connecting real world with this technology, because it's just a tool and we can use it to make a faster and better system, or just to make the same things that we have faster to another group of people. We think blockchain is a catalyst to bring all the incentives, not just the technological part, not all this traceability for the donations or this identity for the refugees, but also this social part of making things for good, like creating the proper crypto incentives for people to solve these common problems. So if DeFi creates the crypto incentives to invest, ReFi creates these incentives to invest for good. So I think it goes beyond sustainable. No, it becomes regenerative again.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now we have covered crypto pilot examples from Gabriela, from Angelo. We have covered concepts. We have covered also how social impact relates to refi. And I think we covered many great thoughts about empowering social impact through Web3. And it's now your turn, developer, founder, to propose a new idea to be created on top of the Celo ecosystem. So lastly, Gabriela and Angelo, I would like to ask you, after this talk, what should be next steps for developers and funders to go and do their tasks and say, okay, this is how I should arrive to a bold idea and propose it during this Build with Celo hackathon. Let's start with Angelo.
Sure. I resonate a lot with what Gabriela was saying. Like, I think it's really important to go to the field, to talk to beneficiaries, to the end users that you aim to service, because and talking to them is not just like a token, like one trip that you want to kind of like, just say that you were there, but in fact, like taking time to really understand their context, to really put yourself in their shoes, and then see what the problem is, to appreciate every corner of the problem, every phase, and then from there, that's where you cater your solution. So very supportive of the approach, or like the mindset that the solution should not come first, before the problem, but it's very important to have the conversation and empathy. And I think this is also a skill for you to succeed as a builder, because it will help you not only in developing a product but also managing your team. Kind of like at the end of the day, the decisions that you take for your product, for your company, is driven by the need, and is driven by a real world use case. Because this is what we want blockchain to do in the world, right? It's not a technology that's supposed to just be the frontier, but a technology that will really help us achieve a regenerative economy and help us really achieve more lives. Because, as they say in crypto, right? Like, we're all gonna make it.
All right. Awesome feedbacks. Angelo, thank you so much. Gabriela, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I would ask the developers to think that this is a very fast moving future that we are having here right now, that we are still in a very early stage of the technology, and that the main obstacle to this, to get mass adoption, is the usability. We need to make sure the technology is not another way of exclusion. For now, in Ethic Hub, we solve it by not interacting with the farmers that don't have connectivity, but interacting with one of the links of the supply chain. We found another solution, but we expect in 1 or 2 years, the technology will be mature enough as to reach the final beneficiary, for him or her to have a card and to be able to swap the cryptocurrencies for the local currency, for the fiat. But in the meanwhile, all this job has to be done. So I would ask the developers to focus on accessibility, to improving the user experience, to make it grabbable, easier for people to use it, Because as an example, just when we start, we should ask our lenders to download the MetaMask plugin into their computers. You don't know me, and I'm asking you to do weird stuff into your computer. And now we have evolved. We have Valora, for example, in Celo that works with the mobile. So that's amazing improvement of the usability. And I expect in the next 1 or 2 years, all these improvements will make us easier to go to the final user to solve the problems of this excluded population. And I hope all of you are part of this movement. I hope all of you work with your hearts and your brains into finding solutions to make this powerful technology accessible for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this wonderful talk with you, Angelo and Gabriela. And just to mention, if you want to know more specifically about the developer, the technical perspective of Celo, and what are the unique features Celo blockchain has, please go to docs.celo.org/developer, and you will find the information there. Also, just a final reminder to, if you have not joined, please do it. Join the Build with Celo hackathon that is on Hacker Air platform. And yeah, we'll be there. You can connect with us on Discord and ask us as many questions as you have. And we are going to be supporting you in all that process. So I think that will be all. Thank you so much for all this wonderful talk. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you, Gabriela. Until next time.
Thank you. Until next time.
Goodbye.